There we go. That's a beautiful space. And just presencing the whole healing and the inner peace to world peace. Yeah. The spaces between the words, and that's what I loved about Holly's guitar session we just had, having that space between the musical notes, and it just brings you to where you notice the body and you notice your being. And this is a great space to introduce two amazing healers who are with Tom and I in this Humanity as Organism Thrives convergence. And I'll just first mention Dr. Henriette Alban, who is a naturopathic physician, but Henriette, I've known you for a while, and I love your openness to possibilities, and just looking at healing as expansive and opening up to the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's it's so unlimited, and to be in that space as healer is such a precious thing. So that's how I would introduce you. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you very much. It's a totally fluid state, isn't it? And I love what you wrote about the description as to what this is about, the different healing modalities, but then about confession, care, alignment, and what doesn't work anymore. And we are so alive to that. I am. For a long time, things haven't worked in the way they once were regulated. And, I'm a fiend of regulation, of categorization, of tableauing everybody into the same school of art or expression, or the forcing of any kind of healing, completely ridiculously thought out by some that think that that's actually going to work. And over the last few years, I mean, the whole piece of the coercion that we have experienced and continue to experience in the ostracizing of certain groups. And thank God for us, that's not what we experience. And when I see people who come and don't want anything to do with the traditional allopathic system or way of doing things, or way of having to follow certain diagnostic tools in a sequence so that everybody in corporate world in the organized world can be satisfied. And it is true, I've always felt that the patient has the answer. So for me, this is an easy topic. Find that completely, it's a satisfying topic among friends who I know think very similarly as I do. So, Dr. Edeling.
The journey of discovery seems to be the thread. Your practice is located in Reading, Pennsylvania, Henriette, and it's called Living in Balance. And we began the morning talking about the pain and the darkness as the pointer. And so much of, well, let me just put a little parenthetical in here. I think this is appropriate. We had a conversation yesterday with somebody that may or may not be presenting, and it was a very rich conversation about chaos and how do you have chaos to order. And with this person, it didn't quite fit in her ideology with the language that we were using. She said, how does that go along with Peace Week? And the there's a beautiful redefinition happening as we quantum leap into the new, call it collaborative version of Homo sapien. Yeah. And it's going to be a little chaotic, and it's a roller coaster. And as we go faster, we have the ability to go faster. Our skill sets progress as we go. And I so appreciate who you are, Henriette, and that's a message you carry not only in your practice, I know, but in your life. And you work in many different modalities of what we might call therapeutic, but you also live in many different modalities of life. And that's a skill set that takes something, right? Is to be able to flip over and talk to people who you might not have ever spoken to before in a certain way.
It's interesting that you say this, because as I'm growing and expanding more and more, also because of being in love and looking at myself through the eyes of another, is incredibly enriching in the way that I was never a conformist and stubborn as a mule, you know, so it's very hard at times for me to get into any new kind of like system. And I find that stubbornness as a mule, and Haseena can testify to that from a recent Akashic reading. It has also helped not to accept everything unless I can check it out myself, unless I can try it, unless I can feel it within me, unless there is a resonance that actually makes sense, right? So thank you. Thank you. I very much appreciate being in both your presences, all of your presences here. And thank you for inviting me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being co-creator in us inviting you. Right. That's the other thing in community. We call it a tribal mentality, right? In a tribal mentality, the actions of the one are where there is a compassionate blanket of collective understanding of the collective. The actions of the one are the reflection of the flavor of the community. You know, so I may have been the one to have the conversation to invite you, but it was this family. And welcome to the rest of the family too, by the way, everybody who's here on the Zoom platform and watching a live stream. And it's rare that I don't hear this man's voice within several minutes of seeing him. And I'm hungry for it. Dr. Herman Edeling, neurosurgeon in South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, and also a medical legal specialist. So he's both a lawyer and a surgeon, and a very strong voice these past few years. And I apologize if I'm putting words into your mouth, Dr. Herman, but I think, you know, I've grown to know you over the past year or two, and I know it was a bit of a surprise. And since we're talking about these quantum leaps of personal ideologies and collective ideologies, right? You, like many of us, were tossed into a conversation 3 years ago that we didn't think we were going to ever be involved in. We couldn't have envisioned that, right? And you also are in love, married long time to a wonderful healer who is, well, let me let you talk about her and that relationship and anything else that you want to pick up on before we get too far away from Dr. Henriette's threads, because when the two of you start speaking, that's where the real beautiful show begins.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you both you and Haseena for inviting me. It's really nice to see you and to see Henriette, and also very nice to see Holly. I came on shortly before the end of your previous session. It was lovely to see and hear Holly talking. It was also lovely to hear what Nancy said. You know, I'm not altogether sure why I'm here, because when you look at other people in this meeting who have spent time and energy dedicating themselves to peace, I wonder, have I actually done anything about that? Do I really know anything about peace? I was a little bit surprised, Tom, when you invited me to participate in this. And I wondered, well, I'm always willing to talk, you know that, Tom. But I was wondering, what am I going to say? Because do I really know anything about peace? You suggested to me that I should prepare. And I said, no, I don't think that's right, because preparation, I'll just go and read stuff that other people say about peace. And I told you what my intention was, just to show up here and talk from my heart. So, so that is what I am proposing to do. I come from a world of conflict. As a medico-legal practitioner, I give evidence in legal matters where there's conflict about a personal injury or a medical negligence or permanent disability, the nexus causation between a wrongful act and a disability, etc., etc. So my world is conflict. But even so, I experience myself being at peace. I got to wondering, how is it that I actually feel at peace? And that is, I felt at peace all the time. Now that has been for a very long time. Without going into specifics, and you know we can talk about this for ages, but since the beginning of 2020, the whole world went into levels and degrees and methods of conflict and chaos and insanity that I had not experienced before. And in spite of that, I still find myself at peace. So how is that? Because I haven't managed to do anything to stop the conflict, done anything to resolve the insanity. I can't. So it got me to thinking, what is peace? And then I came to realize that if I just think superficially about the word peace, one feels, or I feel, it's the absence of war, or even possibly the absence of conflict. And when I said those words in my mind, I realized, no, that's not what it is. Because that is defining peace as a negative. And to me, peace is not a negative. To me, peace is something very vibrant, very energetic, and very powerful that I experience. So to me, peace is a warm vibration in my being that says, I'm okay, you're okay, together we're okay. And if anything is wrong, that's okay. We can deal with what's wrong. Can be okay in spite of what is wrong. And by experiencing that power of inner peace, we are in a position to influence others towards peace. And that I have also experienced, where without me planning or thinking or taking any deliberate steps, people have thanked me for helping them find peace. I didn't know that I was helping them find peace. But it is as though in a certain sense, my defense mechanism against conflict to preserve my health and longevity, but in a greater sense, my knowledge, which I didn't learn this, it just is there. It's knowledge that God gave me, that I am connected to God. I do have the right, and in fact, I think the duty to be full of energy, to have vibrant love and truth and compassion and respect. And to me, Tom, that is what peace is all about.
That's beautifully said. And I know a lot of your medical ideology philosophy is not hiding from the issue. Yeah. And so it was interesting, you said, I haven't done anything to stop the conflict. And when a patient comes to us and there's a pathology, you don't want to stop the pathology and turn immediately to the solution. That's like plucking out the tumor and not finding out how the cancer grew, right? You don't want to turn off the problem. You want to ask a deeper question that says, how did this happen? And one of the pieces that you have done, I didn't mention in our opening. So Dr. Herman is the founding cabal, part of a family of very committed physicians and healers and truth tellers over in South Africa. Do you mind me mentioning this, Herman?
Not at all. Tom, we started in South Africa, and we are in South Africa, but we welcome members, and we do have members from around the world.
Including me, yes. Well, at least a fan. I don't know if I'm a member, but I'm certainly 100% in and would say yes to whatever you told me to do. The South African Vaccine Injury Medical Legal Society, SAVIMS, S-A-V-I-M-S, and much akin, it began akin to the VAERS data reporting system here in the United States, vaccine adverse effects. And so given Herman's various skill sets and passions, he was an obvious go-to to be part of this, the core ideology of which is let people tell the truth, and then you figure it out, right? And that doesn't mean stop the conflict. The conflict will be there, and the conflict deserves to have to be analyzed and to be very spiritedly, compassionately recognized. And offering a safe space, I think it's one of the great things that communities like this and the entire peaceweek.org, the World Unity Week, families here in these convergence rooms, and we offer ourselves a space to be safe and explore the what's next of that. So thank you for not stopping the conflict. The conflict illustrates something, and I don't know that we will ever even know what the something is in our lifetime, but I think one of the most therapeutic, one of the most powerful things that's happening right now in this biped quantum leap thing that we keep talking about is people are claiming that sovereignty and claiming that, okay, I am worthy. I do get to tell the truth. And since you were talking about speaking from the heart, I mean, not an accident, the universe put it together such that, you know, Holly's hour-long warm-up here for us was as heart-centeredly therapeutic, so that we could all be that, right? Then we can tell the truth. And one of the things she took us through was a beautiful exercise that said, I am worthy, and I get to claim me. I get to claim my voice. I get to I get to be stubborn. So what does that do to the stubborn conversation, Henriette? We had an interesting share this morning in one of our sessions. Somebody was sharing that he had a vision of pebbles on the beach smoothing themselves, and we've all got rough edges. You help so many people smooth their rough edges, which is, in the world of Pay It Forward, probably, you know, that's you have that deep inside you as a passion.
I agree. And one of the things I was going to add is, Dr. Herman, when I first met you, my mom introduced me and Shamima to you over Zoom. And I remember that Chum was on that Zoom, and you were sharing something that I felt, me just meeting you in the moment, didn't necessarily, it wasn't my right to access what you were sharing. And I remember leaning back in the seat, you know, just to give you that space. And at the end, I said, well, I was trying hard not to listen because I didn't want to be rude and go away, but I also wanted to give you that space, knowing that you weren't necessarily sharing it with me. And you said something very important. You said, any document or anything that you shared verbally or any document, it's anybody could see it because you're not hiding it from anyone. You said something, not in those words, but basically you are who you are. And when you share something, you know, you just share it. And to me, if that's not inner peace, then I just don't know, because that definitely qualifies one. It's being in alignment. And that's what I believe that, you know, why we're all here, you know, just to align ourselves to who we are and feel comfortable. So yeah, that's wonderful. And I just want to, before we move away, I'd like to bring Carmilla in just for 30 seconds, because I know she had a strong opinion on this. So yeah, Carmilla.
Hello, everyone. So many things happened since the first thought, but I'm going to try and stay focused. Dr. Herman, I was at the last talk that you did with Haseena and Tom in World Unity Week. And when you said you don't know what you have to offer in terms of peace, I just had to say, every time you open your mouth to speak, you bring peace to those of us who share your views, who don't have your experience and expertise, but know somewhere deep down in our guts that the last 3 years have been an absolute farce of medical crap, you know, and all of the brainwashing and lamestream media that's gone behind it. And those of us who intuitively have known that, who have been saying what it is, have always felt judged, always felt that, you know, so many of our loved ones, so many of the so-called experts out there are telling us that we're fools and that we need to trust the experts. So when an expert like you steps up and questions things and so publicly acknowledge what we know to be true, it brings peace to us on levels that you couldn't even begin to comprehend, I don't think. So I just want to say thank you for all that you have done and all that you continue to do. Please know that peace is not just about ending conflict, it's about sharing and confirming for others what the truth is and how to perceive what is going on in the world around them.
Well, thank you, Carmilla. I really appreciate those words, and you do warm my heart. So thank you for that. I just want to make one comment about trusting the experts. Please don't ever do that. It includes me. Don't trust me.
Henriette knows I share her stubbornness on that one.
Who you should trust.
Question everything,
You-
always.
Your own common sense. Every one of us was born with a mind that has freedom of decision-making capacity. And every one of us has a mind that is able to observe and to think and to analyze things logically. And something that you have seen and processed and thought about and come to a conclusion that you know is right, that you can live with. And if new evidence comes to light and you find that you weren't exactly right, you want to change it, you must always be open to that. Because, by the way, there's so much said about science. The only thing that is really true about science is that scientists are more aware of what they don't know than what they think they know. So the whole of science is a quest for more and deeper understanding. True science is acknowledgement of the fact that we are trying to understand. We are looking for truth. We are looking for better and deeper understanding of the natural world or the natural universe. So the only really trustworthy thing in your life, Camila, is your own mind.
Mm. What a very beautiful, expressive, peaceful message. Thank you. Sometimes in the haste of having an opinion, however short-lived that may be, I forget about peace. It's temporary and I find my way back to it. However, it does allow me to see a side of me that is still very militant, if you will, or capable of a militancy that can be used without personal heat, right? It's not like you can protest something without becoming emotionally unstable over it. And so for me personally, the peacefulness is of the essence. There's no haste. I come from a culture that kept saying, hurry up, get this done, get that done. And it gets so massively in the way of a flow that I really, really thank you for your words. It makes me aware of even more how important the calmness is. Thank you very much. Even this silence, it's so delicious. I just had to say that. So surrendering all pathologies, right? Surrendering all that we think we actually know, utilizing intuitively the messages that come from people who want to work with us, or from people and friends with whom we have a relationship, and picking up of those nuances, and then creating a bridge, if you will, between what they feel they don't have and where they would like to be and how they would like to be that, and will show up. And I'm sure, Dr. Edeling, you have the same very similar ways of looking at things. I know Dr. Tom does that. What is missing here? What is not being seen? And so the conversation with a client or a patient requires that they tell us, and that we know, or we can find out how to interpret their answers and ask the right questions.
You know what?
Questions.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to tell you something that would be unexpected. I have always taken the approach in interacting with patients that the most important thing for me to do is to listen to what they say. And whatever I think, I must ask questions to elicit more information and listen to their answers. But at the end of the day, I've got to tell them something. And I've always taken the approach that whatever I tell them has to come from a place of deep respect for who they are and what they are experiencing. But above all, I have to tell them the truth. Now, in my experience as a neurosurgeon, where I've dealt with traumatic brain injuries and brain tumors, brain hemorrhages, spinal cord injuries, spinal hemorrhages, fractures, all of which result in very serious disability or death. It's not easy to be truthful because one doesn't want to hurt people.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, something told me, no matter how bad it is, just tell the truth, but tell the truth with respect and compassion. What I experienced is that every family to whom I told very painful truths, at the end, embraced me and thanked me. And what they thanked me for is the truth. And I've never heard them complain about the horrible situation that I'm talking about, because they don't blame me for the situation, but they thank me for sharing my understanding and also for telling them straightforward what I think I can do and what I know I can't do about it, and what to expect going forward. And again, I never thought about it in these terms, but you made me think about this. Is those experiences, in those moments, I was at peace, and their traumatized family was at peace.
I think you create the space, and what you've just said is you create the space to for them to be able to receive it. So you create that energy space and people can receive, because even in that time, there's a moment where as healer, you could empower them. And it's at that moment that they feel, okay, this is the truth. It's almost like trusting them with the truth and connecting with them and empowering them in that way. What you've just described, which I know I see that when Tom's communicating as healer as well. I look at that, and to me that's just the mark of a great healer, because you get to do that for someone.
Yes, thank you, Haseena. I think you're right, but I want to add another dimension to that, because it's not me creating the space. We create the space together. That space is created by all the participants in the space. And I think the space is created by the participants respecting each other and agreeing to meet in truth. But when you talk about a healer, and remember, to me, healer doesn't matter what your profession is or what your qualifications are. A healer is a human being that helps to heal other people, whatever the problem, the stress, the dysfunction, the suffering, the pain, whatever it is, that the art of the healer is being willing to get into that space with the person who wants you to be in that space.
That becomes a sacred task.
Yes.
And I think this is very much the platform that we have known we need to move forward on. And it is not something that you get from a textbook or from some kind of policy or anything like that, but your words actually move me to tears, Because that's exactly the things that we all have to move forward with that. And I have wondered, and I would like to know what all of you think about this. In my heart, there is also a way of allowing what is imbalanced to exist as a path, and that to interfere in that biomechanically or even physiologically could be a violation of their path.
You said sacred. I thought you were going to say sacred contract.
Sacred.
And there's one level of doctor-patient relationship that says, or any quote trusted relationship that says, yes, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to help you figure it out. In partnership, we step forward. Part of the implied contract there, I think, is not just you'll walk away comforted that there is a path out, but together we metaphysically accept the responsibility for the conditions that brought that about.
Mm-hmm.
It might be as simple as identifying the EMF fields in the patient's house, or the fungus in the patient's walls.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be a little bit more complicated, right? It may be putting together a vaccine injury medical legal society and working with hundreds of lawyers and doctors around the world, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we can all identify, pieces of those things that we would just as soon neglect, right? It's easy to walk away from this stuff and say, this is a big problem. And for me, one theme that keeps coming back is as above, so below, as below, so above. We talk about the holographic nature of a particular pathology. One cell in my body is complaining in a certain way. All 300 billion are complaining in a certain way. And to the extent that I, have any kind of impact on all of you, all of yours are now behaving in a certain way as well. So yeah, and similarly, as we dive down, we're all holographically responsible for the foundational social pathology that brought this about.
Tom, I would like to pick up on a very important word that you said at least twice, and that is responsible. It is incredibly powerful, or has been for me, to know and accept that I'm totally responsible for everything that happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter who it appears is doing it. I'm responsible. And the power of that lies in the fact that if I attribute the thing that is not good to somebody else, I've disempowered myself from even addressing it or understanding it or solving it. But when I accept full responsibility, in that moment, I have the power. And it is amazing. Even without actually doing anything, I already feel better. And I feel at peace because I've accepted responsibility, and it's up to me to decide. Am I going to just accept it, or am I going to do something about it? But whatever I decide, it's in me. And that goes in a very close sense to me, together with the concept of forgiveness. Because if I have accepted responsibility and somebody else feels that, well, they've hurt me, it's easy to forgive them because they're not responsible anyway. I'm responsible. So I don't lose anything by forgiving. But why do I forgive? It's part of the same thing. Because by forgiving, I've cut off the connection or the sapping of power that other entity has, and I have all the power. Even if the problem is insoluble, at least I live with the power of the situation I have. So, in a sense, accepting responsibility and forgiveness, not for the sake of because the other deserved it or earned it or whatever. No, just for the sake that I get peace by taking responsibility and forgiving, and then forgetting. So thank you, Tom, for bringing up that concept.
That's beautifully illustrated. And I think that was the feeling around the first word that we chose, which was confession. When we talk about transformation into a heart-centered healer, conversation with practitioners of different healing modalities about what confession, care, alignment, and what doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And being a safe space for confession, that's the mandatory precursor to anybody being able to tell the truth in the first place, right?
There's a humility that goes with that. A
Very
willingness to not be the expert. You're not the guru to anyone. You simply recognize, at least I do God in others, and wait to see what the guidance is. I'm obviously not dealing with such complex elements as you are, Dr. Edeling, or even Tom, in the neurological field. And for me, the emotional concepts of people's attitudes or how they come to believe that they are in need of help, that slowly evolves over conversations. There is a very loose framework to work with, which I keep changing as necessary. So when we do that, there is the honoring of the patient's path. People will often say, and you probably all have heard this too, well, shall I make another appointment? When will I see you again? What do you think I need next? And my answer always is, start here. See what that feels like. See how you feel and how you will, yes, pay attention to your voice, pay attention to your body, pay attention to what's going on. And we'll adjust. They have access to me. I don't want to keep holding hand, not in that way.
Well, I just want to, that's such a beautiful point, and there is the empowerment too. And I just saw Carmilla and my mom having their hands up, and I'd like to bring some threads into this space. Okay, Carmilla, I know you had your hand up earlier, so feel free to come in.
It's okay if your mom goes first. I've already had a turn to speak. She hasn't.
Mom, we'll bring both of you in.
So, hearing the doctor speak, it reminded me of my cousin's son, who appendix was inflamed. He is a young adult with a toddler, married. the surgery was performed to remove his appendix, and something went wrong. So this is now about 18 months ago. And then they had to, excuse me, put in a colostomy bag. And that's how he's living now. His surgery is due now to remove the colostomy bag on the 26th of this month. And I kept saying to myself, how does a surgeon live with himself? He should be ashamed. And I just began to realize that the surgeon, well, I felt compassion for him because there's nothing he can do. He made a mistake. Maybe he wasn't well qualified. Maybe he genuinely made a mistake. And I just imagine how much the surgeon must be suffering because of his mistake. So I feel compassion for him. Instead of saying to my youngest brother is an orthopedic surgeon. And I said to him the one day over the phone, I said, Ibrahim, how does this man live with himself? And he simply said, I don't know. And he dismissed it. And I think this man must be really suffering. So I feel real compassion for him.
I'd like to respond to that, Rashida. I think that is tremendous wisdom that you have just expressed now, because you've described a situation where you felt anger or worse at an individual, and now you are expressing compassion for that same individual. And there's a tremendous wisdom in that. I don't know you. I don't have enemies. There are many people who do things that I don't like or that I don't approve of, but I don't feel that that person is my enemy. I feel that behavior that that person is doing is something that I disagree with or that is not good for others. So I have a view or an opinion about the behavior or about what is said. And I have a view about what is true and what is false. But I don't have in my heart a feeling of, okay, that person or those group of people are my enemies, because each one of them also has a soul. And they are doing things which I don't agree with. But the point I'm getting at by saying this is that many people in the world do have enemies. And for any person who has enemies, the best thing that they can hope for is that every one of their enemies finds peace. Because if all your enemies are at peace, there'll be no conflict with you anymore. So we spoke earlier about the power of peace. And I'm expanding on that theme, that peace has the power to end conflict. And when I say peace, I don't mean a peace accord or a peace agreement between two people or two groups of people. I mean inner peace in the heart and mind of the individuals. Because once everybody is at peace, then there cannot be conflict, it just evaporates. And there also cannot be ill will towards others. Because when one has that warm, vibrant, full, satisfying feeling of peace, there's no reason to want to cause harm to anybody else. Why would one want to? Because you're already whole. You already have everything that you could want. So I thank you, Rashida, for bringing this up. that the best thing that anybody can achieve is to create peace in those with whom you are in conflict.
I also feel that if you have an enemy, it's not your enemy who suffers, you suffer.
I see your daughter smiling with pride at the wisdom of another.
No, I'm just thinking all of us, I speak for me as well. It takes so long to be able to align to the point where you find that, you know, where you actually find that there is no other, you know, the peace comes from oneself. So when there is no other, there is no enemy. And when we bring that you know, radical self-love into it, there can be no enemy. There's no one else. So yes, it's amazing. It's something so simple, but yet it's very profound. I know that we don't have too much time. I just want to call Kamala in because I know you had your hand up.
Firstly, Auntie Rashida, I know you're not really my auntie, but the little Indian girl in me can't call you by your first name. So Auntie Rashida, I want to give you a big hug. I hope you can feel it all the way to South Africa. That warmth and compassion is just so inspirational.
Thank you, I feel it, but you don't have to call me auntie.
Natural instinct. Oh, that's just how I was brought up, to respect my elders. And Henriette, I also wanted to go back to something that you said that stood out for me. The phrase violation of sacred path. And for me, a sacred path is just that, it's sacred. There is nothing that you, me, or any other being can do to violate the sacredness of another person's path. Whatever interactions come along are part of that path. And any perception of violation is just a reflection of our own self-perception.
Well said. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. I think that in a way, if we feel that we want to empower in our way of being instead of disempowering, then doing it for someone or cushioning something is perhaps the disempowerment, and it doesn't feel like that because obviously we want to help, or you know, we want to be in a way that we are all co-creating, and there is cooperation and so on. But at a certain point, what I found was manifesting in someone else's experience doesn't exist. So when we're able to just hold space for them and just allow them to empower themselves, it's a very powerful experience. And do what we can, but allow them to find that space where they're aligning.
Yeah.
And be in a collaborative hunger with them to find it, knowing that their victory is not theirs alone, but ours. Yeah.
I want to go, sorry. I want to go back to Dr. Edeling's piece. No matter what there is in conflict, no matter what confrontation there may exist in the world, no matter how other people experience things, to stay true to our own peacefulness, to trust that everything is exactly what it is meant to be, because that is how I interpret it. And to allow whatever path shows up to take its course. And that includes being guided from within, from without. You know, God guides us through others sometimes. And we sometimes are those others. It's a blessing.
Henriette. That's
Yeah,
beautiful. Thank you.
thank you. I was going to have a busy afternoon, but I am so contemplative right now. The busy has just disappeared. So I'm just gonna have whatever the afternoon presents. That's great.
Well,
That was
you can join us this afternoon. We have a presenter talking about a scalable true democracy at 4:30 Eastern. So yeah,
I have clients. Thank you very much.
you'll be with us in spirit.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Rashida, it's good to hear your wisdom. Thank you. Great compassion. It's tremendous.
Thank you, Henriette.
I'll give it to
I
Tom
would-
to close us out.
I would suggest as a beautiful closing thought that Henriette, that space, that contemplative space, that is the peace. That is the peace that so many have spoken towards in so many different beautiful ways here this week. And this great session. Thank you. And if there is, and I would go to the grave, how to say this, it could be my last fight. I would go down in the final battle, defending the idea that as I go, so you go. It's
May I
not
interrupt?
something they-
You're actually, may I interrupt?
it's not something they taught us in med school, and it's not something they taught any of us in any school, right? But it's not a rare thought when we have a 15 or 20 minute conversation for real with people. Almost everybody will feel that contemplative space, and almost always people will understand that in the collaborative, in the co-creation, there is that as I go, so you go. So I would suggest, Henriette, that's the great gift that you just gave to 8 billion. Thank you.
You put good words to it, Tom. It's more accessible in the way you just spoke of it. So yes. I
Got it.
believe that being whole within ourselves includes loving even the wrong words we may be speaking and being in a space of peace. And what I had to do often by saying things to someone that I didn't know were in my mind, I hadn't planned to say it, and yet there it is. And it is spoken, in a way that is meaningful to the person in front of us and isn't even ours to own or to say. It's just a role that we're playing at that moment.
Beautiful.
From that, Dr. Edeling, I am totally at peace with that. Thank you for letting me come to that space, all of you. Thank you. It's really powerful.
Everybody have a spacious afternoon. We're going to have to move on. And Nancy, I'm sorry we didn't get to you. I see your hand is up, but we're over time and we're expected on another platform. So we're going to say goodbye and muchas gracias. And we'll see everybody back here at 4:30 for our next session.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye,
Welcome.
Haseena.
Thank you.